5, 16, 19, 21, 30, 3 and 10. Check results. You remember?
Pod a day. Welcome back to a podcast today. Episode 90. I want to say 2. Not yet, 92 together. Which means we're only 8 off 100. It means we're closing into only being a week of 100. Feels good. Also feels kind of bad because ultimately nothing special is going to happen. There will be no balloons. There will be no confetti. Nothing will happen. And then after 100, your next real goal, if you want to be honest, is 200, I guess. But realistically, the next real goal is 500, if you think about it. Like, if you get a 100k plaque, it's like, okay, there you go, you get a plaque for it. You don't get, even though 200 is just as impressive, you did what you just did before, but again, kind of. Although typically you'd get to maybe the second 200k quicker than you got to the first 200k. Depending. I think back in the day that used to be the case. You'd get to the second 200k quicker. But I think nowadays, maybe that's not the case. No, I think that would still be the case. There's probably a couple of examples where it doesn't happen. Or maybe you made a couple of things that blew up and then it took you to slow because it's easier to blow up, maybe. Or is it? I don't know. This is a big tangent. But what was we saying? Oh, yeah. So like, even though it's, I guess, just as impressive, even 400 is 4 times as impressive as 100. You don't get anything for it. Technically, if you're talking in that sense, you don't get anything for 500 either. You got to wait to 1 million, which means I shouldn't, on my scale, I shouldn't be celebrating again until 1,000 episodes, which is insane because if I think about 1,000 episodes, that's at least, 3 years? Or if I'm already at 100, yeah, it's about just under 3, maybe like 2 and a bit years away. Which isn't crazy amount of time, I guess, but it's not short. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is 200 be the next time you can really go woo-ah, which is a long time away. Whereas before it was like everything was an achievement, 10 and then 50, and then this isn't that compelling. Anyway, there's a couple of things that's been on the mind, a couple of things to think about. So we'll talk about those today. If you don't mind, I'm just going to get a bit comfortable here. Not got much going on today. It's an overcast day. The light behind my head is sort of making me look holier. If you're on audio, if you're on video. But yeah, as always, the random scramble beforehand to see anything that's going on in the world. And I think I was meant to speak about this yesterday, but I didn't. The first thing I saw was a nun. There was like people, it was like a fashion shoot or something, and then there was like kissing. 2 women, should probably clarify that, in like a street for like a fashion shoot, probably some sort of high brand, high fashion, whatever, like Balenciaga type shit. And then this nun comes out of nowhere, and she's like, I don't know what language she's speaking. It might have been English. I didn't listen with audio. That would probably help. And she pushes them away. And she's like, no, this is not right. She's like Toto Wolff. She's like, this is not right. This is wrong. And then the girls are just laughing at her. They're like, because the nun is tiny Yoda sort of sized. And then all the comments and retweets was like sassy men and women being like, oh, she's lucky she didn't catch me, she would have caught a backhand or something like that. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, man. I kind of feel like the reaction in the video was actually the one you should have, was actually the best reaction. The kind of just laughing, being like, oh my God, this is a funny situation. Let's just wait for her to leave and then carry on with the job. Because I think if maybe like a 19-year-old guy came up to you and did it, or even like just a younger person, then you would be entitled to be mad, right? But this is a nun here. She looked ancient, like I said, not only Yoda in size, but maybe age, and she probably rarely sees the light of day. She's been practicing, whatever she's been practicing for so long. These are deeply embedded in her. You can't change this about her. She's of another time. It's kind of like if you thawed out a caveman from the ice, and you got mad at him because he didn't understand gender pronouns or something. It's like, he can't help it. He is a product of his time and his environment, and it's not really his fault. And she looks about 90 something, and she's not like, she's just, in her mind, you got to understand, she thinks this is like an absolute sin and all this other stuff. And I get it. There's people who think that who are like 25 or something, and then in that case, you'd be like, you wouldn't give them the same treatment. But I think, you know what? Maybe I'm just against backhanding random old women on the street. she's gonna die in a couple of years, and then that's one less thing you guys can worry about. So, time will take its course or whatever. But that is one thing I saw. Speaking of Yoda type people, right? Kind of. I'll get back to it. I'll circle back, but on how this links to Yoda. But the French language pretty hard to speak, eh? I've been trying to learn French, not for the longest time. So obviously, I'm not saying I expect to be like way further ahead than I am now, but it is difficult. And when I was checking like what is the easiest languages to learn, I did originally try Spanish because it says Spanish is the easiest for like an English speaker. I guess if you're like I don't know, Japanese, maybe Spanish isn't the easiest language for you to learn because it's probably further from you than it is to me. But for English speakers, apparently Spanish is easy to learn. There's a lot of words that overlap and sentences form, I think, in similar ways, maybe. I'm not sure. I think French is one of the harder ones. And they usually say because of things like masculine and feminine and the way they speak with tense, like past, present tense, things like that. And I guess that's difficult. But here's the thing, right? When they talk about masculine, feminine stuff, yeah, it's hard to remember. It's kind of just a memory game. Like, it's only just going to get over time, just by repetition, right? But at worst, you're just going to sound fresh. To me, sounding fresh isn't an issue. Like when someone, if you're working at a job and it's like an Eastern European or like, it's usually Eastern European or like occasionally sort of like, I think I've worked with a couple Korean people, but usually it's that Eastern European or whatever. And if they've learned the language, they're not going to be, well, sometimes actually they speak the language better than you because they've been learning it properly and we're speaking it all like, oh, that's a lot better, something. I don't know, we're just speaking it not in the great way because that's just kind of what you do, and they're probably speaking it in the correct way because they've learned it like, because when you learn a language, they're teaching you all like the correct way to speak, so they're probably speaking all right. But if you do forget, right, and someone sounds fresh, which just kind of means they're speaking the language, but you can tell they're foreigner, not only because their accent, right? You still look at them and be like, oh, wow, you speak English really well. So if they're like, oh, do you know where I find shop and where I need to find shop because I was late to work today because I run here. I run and I was when I was running I got loose and I couldn't find my way to the station. Like they'll be missing out. Maybe so there I tried to sprinkle in a couple of wrong tenses, like speaking present tense, maybe past tense, missing out a couple maybe connectives or whatever, right? But for the most part, they're communicating well. They can understand what you're saying. You can understand what they're saying, and it's like you're effectively you're speaking the language, right? So missing out masculine and feminine stuff is not really much of an issue. The hardest thing, right, I found is that. And it's not the speed either. I've spoken to a couple people in French, and when I say spoken, I mean they'll be speaking to me expecting like a higher level than that I actually possess. But I can actually understand, or I can pick up like a few phrases in there. So like, it only sounds like they're speaking fast when they're saying stuff you don't understand. But when they actually say a phrase you understand, you're like, oh, they're not saying it fast, because when I hear words I recognize, it's actually sounding in a way that's easy to process, right? What's difficult is the translating, because they kind of speak backwards, right? From my perspective, obviously we're speaking backwards to their perspective, right? Yeah, but so for example, you know how we'd be like, oh, I've got an orange cat. They'd be like, oh, it's cat orange. You know what I mean? So it's just like you can't really translate sometimes what someone's saying to you until you've heard the whole sentence, because they'll be saying something and it's kind of backwards, and then right at the end you'll get all the information. You'll be like, oh, it's flipped around, it means this, and you can translate, and then you can speak back to them. But by then, and then you're under pressure because they're looking at you and like and you're trying to get it right, and then it's just, it's a whole thing. But what I'm trying to say is they speak like Yoda, and there we go. There's the wraparounds. There's the circle back. It's like Yoda. It's sort of, English. I've got a brown cat. French. My cat's brown, you are, type shit. And that's kind of how it goes, man. That's kind of how they're going out here. Which makes me think, to French people, is Yoda speaking normally. Because to us, it's like, oh, Yoda's kind of got this ancient speech. He kind of like speaks backwards and like in weird riddles. But to the French, are they just like, the only thing weird about him is the fact he's green and small, because he's speaking relatively same to them. Is Yoda just French? That's another option. Is Yoda just French, or do they do that thing where, like, you know how they change titles and stuff for other movies? Like if it's going out in China, they'll change like a couple scenes or something to make it all like, you know what the Chinese are like. Or like if even any language, they'll kind of just make it so it fits better with that country. So with the French, do they just make Yoda speak like an English person? So to the French, they're like, oh, this guy's speaking in backwards tongues, but really Yoda's just being like, yeah, man, going over to the shop. Yo, Luke, you want the lightsaber? It's cool. But to them, they're like, whoa, what's this backward language? Because it's just so. And why does it have to be that way, man? Why does it? It's just. I wish if the fact that we all don't just speak the same language is like such a bummer on the planet. But I get there's something artsy or something kind of nice about the fact that there's different languages. Separation, you know, you think of it as a bad thing, but I guess different cultures can be cool, and it makes it. I guess you could argue there's something cool about it, right? But even if it is got to be different languages, which I can see the bright side of, why can't they just be like if you want to translate a sentence saying, I went to the shops, you know, but then I came home because it was raining or something. Why can't it just be translate, find the word for I, find the word for went, find the word for to, find the word for find the word for shops, then, but I came back because it was raining, not because it was raining, right? And then that's the sentence. But it's not like that. It's not as simple as translate every word and then just say the words in the order you would if you're speaking English, but now with the French words. Because it won't make sense, man. You'll sound like Yoda. Yoda's French, I'm convinced. Or he's speaking French. He's speaking with French isms in an English accent. I don't appreciate it, mate. He's fictional. Yeah, God, it's difficult, man. It's difficult. Finding shit to talk about is every day proves to be hard. But that's the challenge. And I think it will make me better at, I don't know, scenarios where I have to talk for a long time, maybe interviewing or doing whatever, being on the spot, or just having to find. It's kind of like, what's a good example here? It's like it's like running. It's like running everywhere, you know? It's like if you run everywhere, then you're going to get tired, but then eventually you'll find it easy to run everywhere for a while. And then walking everywhere will be a walk in the park, quite literally, you know? So like doing this every single day, or doing one where you've got to do it weekly, that will be a walk in the park, a talk in the park, and it will be easy as can be. Easy as pie, easy as Larry. When they say easy as, I don't think easy as Larry's the thing. When they say easy as pie, again, I hate when I do this. It's just a phrase. There's probably a reason for it. It's whatever. But if they're talking about maths pie, not easy. It goes on forever. It's not exactly easy to remember. And if they're talking about normal pie, I mean, are we talking meat or are we talking like fruit first of all, like dessert pie or savory pie? And what's easy about it? You know, what's easy? It's as easy to eat as any other food. It's probably as easy to bake as any other sort of desserty dish. Phrases, you know, we kind of just accept them. There could be a phrase which has zero logic. It could be something like, oh, well, you know, you got to keep going, like a sock on like socks on moose horns. You know, it's as fun as socks on moose horns. You know, or antlers. They're not called horns, are they? Fuck me. It could be something like, oh wow, it's you know, keep singing till the chameleon says yes. What the fuck does that mean? But we'd all just say it as a phrase, and that'd be a phrase we've always just said, and we never stop to be like, well, what does that mean, and why are we saying it? I don't even know what it means. It's just a thing. But yeah. But yeah, I got lost there for a little bit, kind of just chatting shit, which I think is what I've been doing maybe for the whole time, 15 minutes, but I'm only acting like it was the last 2 minutes when really it was the entire 15 minutes. Maybe it was the entire 100 episodes, which is about 100 times 15, which is about 1,500 minutes, which is a lot of minutes of chatting shit. And unfortunately though, I've probably been the only person in the world who's had to listen to all of those minutes. Anyway, this was 92, I think, of Pod a Day. And guess when I'll see you again? That's correct, tomorrow for 93.
Here with the kids. And I've got 3 kids, and the geezer was probably on like maximum 20 bags a year. Like the most boring bloke you'll ever meet. Like,